Tuning in to the online broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans, producing after shows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
How are you doing tonight, AfterBuzz?
Yes, welcome. Do you like the intro music? Such a nice change.
I'm so happy to be back. I'm so happy to hear it in studio. It sounds even better.
Sounds super
loud
epic
and proud in
our headphones here.
It's okay. The first time I heard you guys do this, since I wasn't able to be here.
Yes, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. It was one of those. God, I totally just lost my train of thought. So we're just going to get this episode started, and I'm going to remember it later, unless it was a lie. I am so excited to be back in studio. We are here to cover, of course, Man in the High Castle, Season 1, Episode 9.
Yes.
There's only one left after this.
We're almost done.
I know. So Kindness, of course, is this episode. I'm your host, Courtney Henderson. I can be found online at Cohen, C-O-U-H-E-N.
And I am Taylor Bolt. You can find me on Twitter at Taybolt, that's T-A-Y-B-O-L-D-T, or on Instagram at Tbolt, also B-O-L-D-T.
So I think I remember what I was thinking, but
okay.
I'll never actually know because I forgot. But what I was going to say was I loved when I watched back the playback of the last couple episodes I was gone for, that you guys did change up the music. And I do remember what my actual thought was. It was, remember at the very, I think, first episode or second, we talked about expecting like the Games of Thrones epic music?
Yeah, that large, just bombastic.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the intro music, but it's our intro music.
It's our intro music now. Yeah, it's cool. It was the intro. It was the music from the Prince's Crown speech.
Right,
I think the episode where he was assassinated, but not really attempted assassinated.
Yes.
And yeah, it's super epic. I love it a lot.
Yes.
So I'm glad you like it too. Welcome
yes,
back.
I did. I saw that and I was like, oh, I wasn't there. But we have a lot to talk about tonight.
We do.
Of course, as always, we come right in from where we left off last time.
Yes.
I felt bad. I mean, they open that door and Juliana gets shoved in and of course like falls to the ground, and Joe has to he trips up in his step to not like fall into her or trip over her.
Right. So they've just been captured by the Yakuza, and I actually thought for a quick second at the end of last episode that they were going to be treated well, as in like, because it almost looked like the Yakuza like came to save them in a way.
Okay, I wonder
because they were like at odds with the Kempe Tai.
I almost thought it was something where her dad had kind of
maybe pulled
set
some
it up, but like
something
to make it look like they were being captured.
Right.
You know, for like public appearances'
right, I thought
sake,
so too, but
then they were actually being rescued. It was actually being rescued. Yeah, then they were actually just captured.
Oh,
but
well.
thankfully, they weren't captured by the Kapitai.
Yeah,
Am I saying that right?
would have been a lot worse. Kempe Tai.
Kempe
Tai. Yeah, I had to look that one up actually. Because it sounds like Kapitai, which I think is a sorority.
Probably. I didn't have a Greek system where I went to college. But so they get captured, and of course, you know, we don't know what's going on.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they go to get Juliana, and oh my gosh, does Joe freak out.
Yeah. I mean, I would too, I guess. You're talking about when they get Juliana initially.
Yeah, and it turns out she's being released.
Yeah, she's being released.
Like bond or whatever you want to call it. Her ransom is paid.
By the Resistance, who had that 10 grand or 10,000 yen sitting around. Because they didn't use it before to get the film. They used Joe's 100,000 yen. Yeah, that worked out nicely for Juliana. But then Joe doesn't know what happened to her and doesn't know what's going on with his situation. In fact, he's in a pretty bad situation, come to find out.
Yeah.
Because the Yakuza are just trying to make a little money here, and they're wanting to keep the film to do who knows what.
I honestly don't even think they care about the film. I think they just know it's worth something.
Yeah, I think they just know people want it. And so as long as they have it, they have a lot of leverage.
A little power, yeah. And like they tried to do the whole episode. I mean, they were just trying to get money. They were not about to hand over the film.
No.
For the So
get money.
And they're
like, you lost the film and the 100 grand or 100,000 yen. Yeah.
But,
oh well.
Yeah. So, of course, then we see Juliana run into Ed.
Right, yeah. So Ed, let's be real, Ed has been the best friend ever through all of this.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, I feel bad as a person because there's something about him, like, I don't really like him.
I think you said that before. Yeah, you're not a huge fan of Ed's character.
I don't distrust him. Like, I don't think that he's a bad guy. I don't think that he's going to turn on them.
Yeah.
I think maybe he's just like too good, and I just feel guilty because
sure.
I don't know if I could be that kind of a friend. It's like
you're holding up a mirror to you.
Yes, and I'm like, I don't measure up.
Good as Ed.
Yes,
maybe he does
just like, Ed, you're making us all look bad. I don't know. I genuinely feel guilty about that.
I've always
but it doesn't change my mind.
Yeah, I've always had this feeling that something bad is going to happen, and he's either going to be at fault or he's going to be the victim. But I've always kind of felt like he's always going to mean well, but he's going to misstep or something,
maybe that's why.
And either get himself in trouble. He seems like a liability almost in a lot of ways.
Maybe that's what it is for me.
Yeah, up until this episode, though.
He's not fully in. He's invested in them, not in the cause,
right.
And so he's gonna trip up.
Well, there's also part of me that's like, why is he so invested in them? Because like Frank isn't necessarily a very good friend. At least what we've seen,
he's a horrible
pretty
friend
bad as a
to
friend.
Ed, at least.
Yeah, and now Ed is just going way out of his way for them. But in this episode, he really comes through as, I guess, the opposite of a liability, in that he's able to really provide help for them.
Yeah.
And like sheltering them for a little while. Last episode he went and bought bus tickets. Like, that's such a nice gesture. Thank you, Ed.
Yeah.
We didn't end up getting on the bus.
Right. He tries to do it again this episode, but now they're taking ID.
Right. They can't. So it's a complicated situation. But yeah, that's one of the things that happens in this episode is that Frank is waiting for Juliana, and she never shows, and we know why, but he doesn't know why. So, that's got to be pretty stressful.
But, that was one of those moments where, of course, the second she's like, I have to go, I'll be there. It's like, no, you won't. We know you weren't going to be there, Juliana.
Right.
She wasn't. And, of course, what was Frank's, like, first thing, something about, is he going to be there,
Right.
Like,
yeah, okay, I will say this about that relationship, like what Frank knows of Joe, that got really hot and really heavy very quickly in the initial introduction of it, where as soon as she was like, there was a resistance operative there, he was like, was it a man? And like punches something across the room. That was an awesome scene, but there was there was that piece of me that was like, dude, like, whoa, quick to action on that one.
Nothing has happened.
Yeah, nothing's happened thus far.
I guess in this episode, Joe kind of was like, there's things I want to say to you.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which and then she
maybe he just
makes
has
the
really
comment,
good intuition,
but then she makes the comment about what does she say? Oh my gosh, like, oh no, he makes the comment to Juliana about, Frank's a really lucky guy.
Right.
So there's like a little, I don't know if it's foreshadowing or if it's just kind of trying to confirm our suspcions.
Well, watching, as far as how far Joe goes out of his way for Juliana in every
and vice
episode,
versa. Truly.
There's something going on there.
Right.
I think
but it's unspoken.
It's unspoken, and there's been no action on it, really. I think so, right? There hasn't been
I haven't
any
seen
action.
it, no, and I really want that.
I'm
the worst. I'm like, the nicest guy on the show, I hate him.
Right,
and I'm like, can we just like
Frank,
break up this like happy couple for like the hot steamy people?
I don't know why but I feel the same way. But Frank is pretty good to her in a lot of ways. He's trying to get her out and take care of her and protect her, and he's waited on her to come back, sort of. I don't know. He's been distracted with other things, and now he's suddenly sort of a different person than we saw in the pilot. He's got
Very
this
different.
fire in his gut. He's like he stands for something, and so I can see her being attracted to him in this new way. But there's something about that mysterious meeting between her and Joe in the neutral zone that makes that appealing.
Well, and then, of course, they see each other again. That he kind of shows up and...
Right. It's all very romantic, I guess, in a horribly oppressive societal sort of way.
Well, it's one of those things for me where, and I've been in the situation where you aren't looking, and you meet somebody, and you just click. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I've had it. I was one time I was actually in a relationship with somebody, completely happy, getting more serious, and I like met somebody through friends. And we're all hanging out, and one night it was just one of those like, whoa, like there's something there.
Scandal.
No, but it was like one of those, and nothing ever happened. We never dated, but it was just one of those where like I remember calling my dad and being like, does this happen? Like, like you're happily married like 30 plus years, like what?
Yeah.
Like I'm in love with someone, happily, but and so I almost
that's
get where Juliana, because it's one of those where it's like there is
like you
kind
find
of,
it when you're not looking for it. Like she went to the neutral zone to deal with this film thing, to try to figure out what was going on with the films and the Man in the High Castle and the Grasshopper, and she meets this guy, even though she has this love back in San Francisco.
And it doesn't, what she may or may not feel or what she has with Joe in no way negates what she has with Frank. I mean, and she's clearly choosing Frank, and she has to, we see in the episode, she has to make a point to say, look, I choose to be with you, or I want to be with
and
you.
That was sort of a big moment. I mean, it didn't come as a surprise or anything, but
of course not.
To have her just say that point blank, it's very clear that she knows what she wants and she knows what she's trying to do, but she cares enough about Joe that she's willing to jeopardize her future, Frank's future, and her future with Frank, their futures together, to try to get Joe free. You know what I mean? Like that's a connection. That's a deep connection to want to do that for someone.
Right. I mean, and I get it.
He saved her life.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've never been in a situation where I've needed my life saved.
Right.
So I can't say that I would feel such a loyalty or not as well. I mean, because at this point, I mean, it doesn't feel very unclear which side of the fence Joe's on right now.
As far as liking Juliana?
No,
not
as far as
Juliana,
resistance or not.
Right, we're not really...
He is very clearly not resistance, at least in the way they're showing him to us.
He's not resistance, but I've also I'm starting to have all of these questions about Obergruppenführer in the past couple of episodes too, where I'm like, maybe what he's doing isn't... Because basically what I came to the conclusion last episode is that he's not working for like the Nazi...
Last episode meaning like...
Episode 8 and this episode too. But he's not working for like necessarily the Grand Nazi Reich so much as it's this one very specific...
He's like a chapter.
Yeah, what we kind of learned about Obergruppenführer and his office is that he's it's like a task force. It's like one very specific task.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that separates him, but now we're seeing sort of this like party struggle between like Obergruppenführer and Obestgruppenführer, Heydrich, to where it's like, I don't know, like that might morph into something more honorable maybe, or might morph into something at least more understandable. I just don't know. Not now. It's like not only is Joe a question mark, but his Obergruppenführer and like that particular task force is a question mark for me.
Really?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I'll save it for predictions. Sorry, I'll come back. I promise. I won't forget. I'm gonna write it down.
Good.
Just kidding. I'll remember. I remember. So let's see. So the other thing I thought was interesting was Ed's grandpa. So they go there. Ed
that
brings
was
her
Ed's
over.
grandpa. Yeah.
Yes.
It took me a couple seconds to realize
and he says, I think it's towards the end. He kind of says, like my legs don't work, but I'm not blind.
Right, because they're kind of like...
Because he asks her if they're in trouble.
It's sort of obvious. Like they keep like running away from like the man in the wheelchair and like closing doors. And it's like obviously something's going on here.
Right. I mean, and
he's not an
why
idiot.
Can't you just say to somebody, look, I mean, we're dealing with something. It's really none of your business.
But
I mean, I don't know.
It is his house. I mean, I agree with that. But also, as soon as they tell him that something is going on, he's like, you have 10 minutes. So I think that...
and I'm sure Ed knew that. Like, I mean... You live with your grandpa,
right?
But on the same token, it's like I get where the grandpa's coming from, because of course every episode there's somebody kind of fearing for their life and kind of walking the line, and that's the nature of the time.
Every
and that's
episode for these characters.
Yeah. When I say
episode.
someone, I mean one of them.
Basically, all the time. And they're always deep in it.
But I want to. First of all, I loved last episode, which I won't stay on. That we know where Lem is and that he's fine.
Right. He's active.
So
he's
happy,
in San Francisco now.
So happy to see that. Yeah. So I don't know how I feel about. I don't even know her name, because like that's how much I don't care about her.
The florist resistance lady. Yeah, I don't think
they've given us a name.
I'm sure they have. But I actually...
But I'm just saying, I like Ed more than I like her.
Really? Okay.
And you know how I feel about Ed now. So.
We haven't seen enough of her, I think, to really get a grasp.
I don't really trust her. because I feel like
I almost don't trust the Resistance right now. It's
Right?
for some reason like these two people being like Resistance members. I mean, I guess Lem has been sort of validated in a way for us on screen because we have the other like 3 people come up, and now we've seen him with a cipher. So he's sort of validated in a way that I don't know if she's been validated in that same way for me.
No.
But I guess she was connected to Trudy and getting the film from Trudy.
Yeah,
so.
but Trudy's dead.
Yeah. It's also like, I don't understand. I think what it really, the root of that is that I don't know who the man in the high castle is. I don't know. I don't know what his intentions are.
I don't think we're going to find out. Because
the Resistance is basically his arm. It's basically like his group of people that do his bidding. But I don't know what his intentions are. Yeah, the man in the high castle.
Yeah.
I have no idea what his intentions are right now. And that makes me not trust the Resistance. You know what I mean?
Right. Like they think they're actually the good guys, but
what if they're not?
They may not be.
Yeah,
right.
Because we haven't met this guy.
Right. I mean,
he may not even be a man. There's probably no castle. We don't know. We have no idea.
It's a woman.
It's a woman
in a shack.
Yes.
Just kidding.
In a watchtower.
But so, as we were talking about Joe and Juliana, and so the florist and Lem get Juliana out with the little bit of money they have left.
Right.
And then Juliana actually goes to Frank, who has this money
that he's just
scored with the,
illegally from
whatever. What was he said? I know it was the necklace.
Sitting Bull's necklace.
And they said he has a woo because the man of sorrow and loss. And anyway, so
it was a big
couldn't
thing
believe
to ask
that
of
she.
him.
But again, it's one of those where I feel like if there was a deeper something with Joe that she thought or intended to act on, she would never go to Frank for the money. It's one of those where you can't ask. You can't ask, like, if you're gonna leave someone, you can't go ask them for their money to save the man you're gonna be with.
I think, yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean?
I think it's like an honor thing for her because. I mean, Joe saved her life ostensibly on the bridge.
Yeah.
And he saved her life again with the marshal
car.
and the car helped her stage her. Like he was instrumental to her getting out of the neutral zone alive.
Right.
And he did help deliver the films to the man in the high castle, whatever that means.
Right.
He delivered 2 films. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So she has a reason to trust him, and she has a personal connection to him.
Right.
So it was still a big thing to jeopardize her future with Frank, but I think that just speaks to, I think it was a character thing for her, I think it was
definitely.
Yeah, she felt like she owed him.
And that's what I'm saying, that it's, if it was anything else, she couldn't have gone to Frank for the money.
Right.
That would have just not been.
Yeah, she's
cool.
very much in it with Frank, but I just, it's not over yet. And we have a season 2 coming up, so it's not going to be over
so
next week either.
I don't think we're going to see the man in the high castle.
I don't think so
because,
either. Yeah.
But I hope we know who he is before, like, the series finale, whenever that is, season 2.
It's like the end of the series.
Yeah,
like
that won't work for me.
Yeah,
that won't work for me. You hear us? That won't work for us.
we need to at least learn more about what's going on, and we actually do later in this episode, which made me very happy. But I don't want to skip ahead to that just yet.
Right.
But we learn a little bit. Some of my previous predictions and theories are now thrown into question because we see more film footage. Crazy.
Oh my gosh, we are saving that.
Yeah, we have to save that.
So many thoughts and feelings about that. I want to talk about John Smith.
Yeah, let's go. Let's talk about John Smith.
I feel like this is another episode. We learn a lot about him because of the people. So first of all, one of the things we see Rudolph.
Yes, we see Rudolph in his suit of Nazi armor, as it were. He's all dressed up.
Yeah, like
drinking
totally
fine wine.
Not beaten up in the woods, not killed, and I'm like, oh.
What's going on here? Yeah.
Well, because remember
for a minute, I had to double take. I was like, "That's Rudolph, right?"
Right. Me too.
I was like, that's definitely Rudolph," because I was like, "Surely he's not dressed nicely in a restaurant right now, drinking wine."
I thought he's dead in the woods.
Exactly.
Well, and that was the thing. So he asked Joe what he would do, and made Joe think that's what was happening to Rudolph.
Right.
When in reality, he saved him. I mean, I feel like that was a setup.
But that was Obergruppenführer that saved him. So Obergruppenführer took him and put him in a holding cell and was trying to get him to tell him what he was doing. And then we have him meet with Obergruppenführer, who's Heydrich, the white-haired gentleman who
I know who Heydrich is.
Crazy scary, comes in and forcibly takes Rudolph off of John Smith's hands.
Right, but what I'm saying is, remember when they were all at the house for
for VA Day? Yeah.
I thought they were taking him literally right in that moment to the woods to like kill him. Yeah.
Well,
so I'm saying that didn't happen.
Yeah. Well,
you know what I mean?
I even thought that he was going to give him over to like the SS or like the Greater Nazi Police, but those were like his soldiers, his personal.
Yeah, that's why.
So he took him into his own custody so he could treat him well initially. Well, treat him well in quotes. But
so that for me was like a whoa, you know. Because as far as I'm concerned, it seemed, I don't know, maybe obviously I just was totally wrong on that one.
No,
but I feel like he also made it, he tricked Joe, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, I think he made it look like bad things were coming for him.
Sure.
Partially because that was what kind of Joe said, sometimes you got to make sacrifices. When in reality, he was really keeping him safe.
Yeah, well, I don't necessarily think that Rudolph, and we kind of learn in this episode, I don't necessarily think he's in a good situation at all right now. I think that he's...
No, I mean before Hydra came and got him. Right. I'm saying, you know, that was what John Smith was trying to do.
Right.
But I don't think that's the intention that Joe had.
Yeah. Well,
I think he gave Joe.
I think he definitely, he gave Joe the impression that horrible things were going to happen to him.
But I guess he probably had to.
Yeah. Well, it's also, he was in custody. You know what I mean? He was held in a cell. He wasn't tortured, but he was asking him for information, and he was...
True.
He was like a prisoner, so I don't necessarily think it was like, oh, I'll take you under my wing, we'll be fine together. It's like he was a prisoner.
He had to do something.
Yeah, he was
actively do something.
He just decided not to torture him because he has a history with the man. You know, I think that more speaks to Obergruppenführer or John Smith's moral integrity when it comes to his own relations, like
and
the people,
loyalties.
like he takes care of his own. In a lot of ways, and we see that with his family too. Like he very much protects his family.
I disagree now.
Really, I mean, he's talked a lot about how important his family is to him.
I know. Okay, but with his son.
Yeah, but we talked about this a lot last episode, where he doesn't, you know, he hasn't made a decision yet about having to euthanize his son.
Right.
And he's definitely struggling with it. Like it's sort of this inner conflict between him. Because we learned in the last couple episodes that the reason that he's so invested in the Reich and the Nazi Party is because it provides a safe place for his family to live. He basically says it straight up. It's like, my family can be safe here. Like, I've created a world to keep my family safe. But now that Reich is putting his son's life in jeopardy. So he's having, I think, this really intense internal conflict.
I think it's just his health.
Well, right, but the Nazi Party doesn't allow invalids. So if his son has this disease, he has to kill his son. Or his,
no, I understand that.
Will. Yeah.
But it's also, I mean, and I don't know what the right answer is, but it's one of those things where I do appreciate that the doctors were willing to say, you know, if you get a second opinion, if you try to go through these channels, there's gonna be records, and
we'll have
like you're saying, like, you know, so they're letting him do it on his own time. But it's one of those where, you know, we see some fall down the stairs. It's like,
yeah, we actually see
no cure, if there's nothing that can be done, especially in that time and the way that life is kind of viewed then, I mean, at some point you're kind of torturing your kid. You know what I'm saying?
No, I mean, here's the thing, like the kind of, you know, genetic disorder that he has is, it exists today, but we don't euthanize people. There are ways to live with it, but the Nazi Party does not allow.
But were there ways to live with it then, like there are today?
Yeah, I mean, I had a great uncle who contracted polio as a kid and lived until he was, I think, 80 something. I mean, he lived a long time. He had no use of his legs, but you know, I got to know my great uncle, which I wouldn't take that back for anything.
Oh, of course.
And again, you know, there's getting into a talk about, you know, whether or not euthanasia should be considered.
Oh yeah, we're not going there.
I don't want to go there.
I guess
on an after show podcast,
I just don't like that his wife is completely clueless.
Right.
I don't. Yeah. I mean, and obviously it's getting worse. Mm-hmm. And
yeah,
I mean, we're gonna have to. And the kid doesn't know either, right?
Yeah. I mean, the kid doesn't. I think the kid knows.
Well, he's got to know something's wrong.
He's kind of hiding something. You know what I mean? He seems so embarrassed when he falls down the stairs in this episode.
Right.
That I think that I don't think that he knows what's going on.
He doesn't know he's terminally ill. Yeah.
I don't think he knows the stakes.
Or maybe not terminally, but like, I mean, he's losing functionality in his body, and he's got to be feeling weird or off because of that. But I don't think he understands because I don't think it was explained to him.
No, I don't think it was either. Right.
And that's what I don't like.
Oh, that he's hiding it from his family?
Yes.
Yeah, but the thing is, the second that he says it, it's real, and then he has to make that decision.
But the thing is, it's real either way.
Right.
To me, it's like
but
telling
so far,
somebody... It's like saying...
But he had no reason to think that... Yeah, I agree. Like, he needs to make a decision. But it's also like...
he needs to tell them. It's not only his decision to make. That's why I don't like this.
Well, no. I mean, he ultimately can't make the decision. You see what I'm saying? Ultimately, the Nazi Party has already made the decision that he has to euthanize his son. Him not speaking it into the world is what's giving him time to at least be with his son or giving him a chance to think about it.
But I'm saying he could tell his son, so his son understands what's going on, and he could tell his wife.
I wouldn't tell him. Are you kidding? That he's going to be put down? That he
No. Don't tell him he's going to be put down.
Well, what is the other option? It's not like he has another choice. If this disease is real and he has it, he will be put down. I mean, it's a horrible thing, but
and he knows that you think his son knows that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like, this is like, it's the same, like, you can't be Jewish. If you're Jewish, you're killed. If you're an invalid, you're killed.
Frank's
that is
Jewish?
The Nazi Party. Yeah, but Frank is outside. I mean, if it was found out that he was Jewish, he would be killed.
They do know he's Jewish. They killed his family.
Yeah, but they've let him off. I don't really know why. I think that's
sort of a plot hole. We've talked about that, yeah.
Yeah, why did Frank not... Frank should have been shot on the firing squad initially. I just don't know why Inspector Keto would let him live, really. I think it was just to keep the character alive. But yeah, I mean, I think the point of that is just the oppression of the party, of the Nazi Party in this circumstance. But if there's no decision to be made... He's basically hiding it right now. Obergruppenführer is hiding this information because as soon as he says it, his son will die.
But that's what I'm saying. He won't if he only tells his family.
I don't think so. I mean, I think that his wife is... I mean, she even says, like, you know, thankfully this party puts these people down or euthanizes these people. She says that, paraphrased. I think that... If his wife knows, I think she would do it even. And I think if his son knew, I mean, that would be a horrible thing to tell a kid, you know, your kid, that...
But, I mean, what are you going to tell him if you decide you do it or if it gets found out?
Sure. I mean, I think it seems, you seem to be frustrated that he's not doing it right now.
Wouldn't you want to know that you only had 2 weeks to live? So you could do... I mean, I guess...
I don't, like, yes, the answer to that is yes, but I wouldn't necessarily... And again, like, I would have to insert myself into a lot of circumstances that John Smith has gone through that I haven't, but I wouldn't want my kid to know he only had 2 weeks to live.
And I guess I'm not looking at it from John's perspective, I'm looking at it from his son's perspective.
Okay.
Like, I'm pissed for him that... he doesn't know, and he doesn't get to know.
What's going to change if all of a sudden he knows that he has 2 weeks? I mean, it's not 2 weeks.
The truth, I guess. I'm a huge truth person.
Sure, but...
So that's all.
But,
I mean, for me.
Once he knows that information, as soon as he knows that information, his life is over.
I don't think so.
Really?
I don't think so. I don't.
I mean...
We'll see. We'll see what happens.
We'll see.
I mean, because I guess the doctors are letting him live.
No, this one doctor is giving Obergruppenführer some time to spend with his son before he has to kill his son. He gave him the morphine, he gave him the cocktail to do it
himself, right.
He's not like your son will somehow be okay.
I get it, yeah.
Yeah, unless Obergruppenführer does something crazy and, you know, sort of chooses his family, which I think is a valid thing.
Possibility, yeah.
He could potentially choose his family and his son over his life's work in the Nazi Party. But I think that's the interesting internal conflict that's going on.
Well, and I think that's completely possible because the only reason he's where he's at with the party is for his family.
Yeah, I agree. So, I think he says it point blank, and it's got to be an immense struggle. It's like, this thing that I fought so hard for is now putting my son's life at jeopardy. Right. You know, if it weren't for the Nazi Party, his son would live a life. I mean, he would still have the disease that he has.
Right, of course.
But he wouldn't be put down. I mean, he could live a life. You know what I mean? And he would. So the Nazi Party, in a way, is robbing him of his son. And that is, I'm sure, a lot for him to try to grasp in this moment. And also, he has other stuff going on. He has, I mean, we see him kill another Nazi member in this episode.
Captain Connolly. The suicide?
The suicide, quote unquote, for taking orders from Obergruppenführer Heydrich.
Right. So, if I am not mistaken, that's the guy that he let live, who convinced him.
He was the guy he put the gun to the back of his head, right? Because the resistance member identified him.
Yeah, and he Captain Connolly convinced him it wasn't him.
Right.
And in a way, it wasn't.
Isn't it kind of interesting that the resistance member told the right person initially?
Right? Yeah.
That was the person that he named.
Yeah.
It was the actual guy.
Right?
Very interesting.
Despite all the drugs and everything.
Yeah, despite the LSD trip.
But it's a hard thing because again, that guy, Captain Connolly's like, well, I wasn't really disobeying orders in the sense that for him, it seems like he felt like he was getting a higher level order.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because he was getting them from the Nazi Party. He was getting them from Heydrich.
Right, but honestly, this is where it gets you have this internal political struggle. I don't know what the answer is. I mean, I also don't blame Obergruppenführer Smith for pushing him off the tower.
No, I mean that was a given. I mean, as soon as you saw where they were,
I was like, oh, someone's gonna get pushed off here, and it's not gonna be John Smith.
Right.
Yeah.
So that so I completely understand that. But as the guy, if they're sitting here saying, have you betrayed your party? Have you, I can see where to him it's kind of like technically.
Well,
no.
here's the thing. I mean, you have the gun to the back of your head like that. I mean, if he says yes, they're just going to pull the trigger. You know what I mean? So I mean, I think you would deny it until the end in that situation, anyways. Right,
but I'm saying, absolutely. But I'm saying,
because if you
may
admit
not
to
have
treason,
thought he was. But I'm saying, I don't think he thought he was committing treason. So if they say, "Have you commit treason?" I think he honestly believes the answer is no.
Sure.
So he's not lying.
But I think he would have lied either way.
Well, of course he would have lied. He's got a gun to his head.
Exactly.
But I'm saying that's another one of those things where. What is that kid supposed to do?
Right.
Like you're saying about, John Smith's son.
He just shouldn't have brought 4 sugar cubes with the coffee.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
what gave him away. He just shouldn't have done that. He should have asked how he wanted his coffee.
I felt like he did a pretty good job. Trying to cover and like trying to have like really good service.
He did a good job, but he gave himself away. It's amazing how one of the things I loved in Inglourious Bastards, which I think about sometimes in relation to this, is that moment where he holds 3 up wrong. He holds his the 3 up like the first 3 fingers rather than the thumb and the first 2 fingers, which is how the Germans would say 3.
Yeah.
Gives him away, and it's just the smallest little thing that just wasn't quite right, but someone's mind is sharp enough and they're tuned in enough to the situation and they know what's at stake, like John Smith does. Boom, that's all it took, and then flash forward an episode and we see him shoving someone off the tower.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty intense how the small things can give you away in this kind of society.
In this after show, we haven't talked a lot about it, as far as the directing or the writing and all of that. But I always wonder, in that case, like as a writer, who knows this versus this?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? To
cool.
write that, or this. I mean, who thinks up the coffee? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's going to be the coffee. I mean, and that might be in the book.
Done.
I haven't read. And now it's one of those where I'm like, well, I may just have to give in and read it, even though we're going to get a second season.
See, that's what I'm worried about. I was going to read it after this after show ended, and then now I'm like, but if we're going to come back for season 2, I don't want to spoil anything, so I don't think I'm going to read it yet. But I'm also like, I just want to know, how does it line up with the book? Like, is season 1 the book, and then season 2 is more, or is season 1 the first
when we read
half
the book.
of the book?
I think I'm going to try to read the book.
Okay.
When the finale and everything.
I can't do it in good conscience.
Before we call it a night,
yes,
we have to talk about the film.
Right. So we have the film. We also have verification that the microfilm was the Heisenberg device.
Yes.
They're looking for uranium, but Tagomi, it didn't go as planned. There's going to be a nuclear bomb. They're going to use it. The prince that is recovered from the assassination attempt is going to use a nuclear weapon against the Nazis. We've just learned that piece of information.
I still wonder if that's true. I mean, that it's actually the prince. You know what I mean? Because I get being shot up could have a change of heart.
Well, he's the one that has to make that decision.
Right. Well, but I mean, it's one of those where people could try to make that decision for you.
Sure. Yeah, we'll see what happens there. But it's just the fact that Tagomi's plan for peace has failed utterly. Just
the
collapsed.
Worst way. And now he's been found out.
No, he hasn't been found out. They found the microfilm, but they don't know how it got there. They're just coming to him to find uranium deposits so that they can actually build the weapon. At least there's been no direct implication that he's been found out.
Okay.
Yeah. They haven't said that he's been found out. Whether or not the general suspects anything, who knows? But they haven't said anything about it yet. So we'll see, I guess. We've got one more episode. And then a whole nother season.
A whole nother season. So
Yes, what you were saying is the film.
The film. Oh my gosh, we finally get more film footage.
Yeah. It was pretty awesome.
Okay, so of course I'm like, again, I guess we'll go back to the writing very quickly. I love how, Joe's now trying to get them all out of town because, as we said earlier, Ed can't get them tickets because you have to have your ID to buy a ticket.
Yeah.
Which it's weird because like to them that seems preposterous, but today I guess you don't have to have your ID to buy the ticket, but I mean to get on a plane you have to have your ID with you.
Right.
That was just like wasn't a thing then, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess this was long enough ago, even with the historical differences long enough ago that maybe that's not a thing yet.
Yeah. So they end up going and waiting in a school because school's not in session that day.
Right.
So it's like, of course, they're at a school, waiting to hear from Joe. And I didn't catch it. And it was like a pleasant surprise that I didn't predict as I watched that Juliana would get the film as insurance.
Right.
I don't think Joe knows she has it.
No, Joe gave it to her.
How did I miss that?
Yeah, no, so they go back in. Joe goes crazy, shoots a couple of people from the Yakuza. But then there's that scene where Joe meets Frank and Juliana, and they're walking down the street, and the one Kempe Tai officer is behind them. And he hands it to her. He's like, I'll lose him, you take the film.
I didn't realize he handed her the film.
Right, yeah. It was quick.
Okay.
That was a really quick little scene.
So I did see that.
Yeah.
I'm not crazy, but I didn't realize it was the film. Because the way she says... Like, he'll come back, I've got the film, was like, Frank didn't know, and, like, she snuck it.
Right.
The way she said it. And
yes.
Okay. I know exactly what you're talking about. So Joe knows she has it.
Joe knows she has it, but we don't know what's on it yet.
But
and then they show us.
Yeah, because they're at a school. I'm like, of course, they go to a school where they can watch it.
It's
you know
great,
what I mean?
Yeah. But, gosh, we see a nuclear bomb go off.
And we see Frank kill, Joe.
So the
kill
nuclear
Frank.
bomb going off thing, I was like, okay, I can see that because we've seen some real war footage before. But then we have Frank. There's Frank, and then there's Joe in a Nazi uniform, and Joe shoots Frank in the back of the head, execution style. There's a whole line of people.
Watching yourself get shot.
Yeah, I just can we go to predictions because this throws a whole lot of stuff
predictions.
off for me.
And now, your AFTERBUZZ TV predictions.
Go for it.
Okay, so up until this point, I've thought that there was some sort of like veil on the U.S. where there was like the U.S. had actually won, like the Allies had won the war outside. You know what I mean? Because we're seeing footage of an Ally victory.
Right.
So I was
in the first film.
Yeah, I was like, there's some sort of subversive, secretive thing going on in the U.S. for some reason.
Like the Truman Show bubble.
Yeah, kind of like that. Because for whatever reason, we don't know anything that's really going on in the outside world.
Well, we don't know what reality actually is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden with this, now it's like reality is horribly askew in my mind. So we see Frank die at the hands of Joe. So to me, this is like, and that we don't really know what bomb that was. That could have been, I guess, it looked like maybe Nagasaki, I think.
Yeah, I was trying to figure it out.
But it also could be Washington, D.C., you know what I mean? Because we see the Nazis there in the aftermath. So I'm guessing that might be like quote-unquote real footage from Washington.
Right.
But the fact that we see Frank and we see Joe, I can't think of what it would be other than this is somehow some alternate reality. There's somehow like a parallel dimension sort of thing.
I thought it was more of like a foreshadowing, like a...
You think that hasn't happened yet?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because, well, before it was...
That actually kind of makes more sense.
Before it was
I hope it's
Frank and Joe, I was like, oh, is this footage of like Auschwitz or, more of that during the war? Because I think that still happened. Yeah. They just won. You know what I mean? Because, of course, like you were saying, the Jewish and the invalids and all that. Like,
what I'm wondering now, was that because you see a bridge, and I was trying to place that bridge.
Same.
Was that the Golden Gate, or was that the Bay Bridge in San Francisco?
I thought it was the Golden Gate, but of course you can't see it because it's in black and white.
You can't really see enough, and I was just like, that could be any, because I saw that specifically.
And it's like kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, but I was like, that could really be any suspension bridge,
Right.
Just because we don't have enough distinguishing features.
I would need to go back and look again because I think that I think it's meant to be distinct.
Okay.
Because how else are you going to know? Oh, no, it is. It is because they're in San Francisco. It's got to be the Golden Gate Bridge.
Well, but we don't know that the bomb that in that film the bomb went off in San Francisco. All we know is that. I think there's a good chance it's San Francisco.
That's got to be. So, it's got to be.
I'm just like, is this like a parallel dimension? Like this would have happened, but now like things are different, or is this like is going to happen and hasn't happened yet?
Predictions. I think it's going to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean. But on the other hand, if that film is going to happen, what about the films where the Allies won? Are those going to happen?
Maybe. Oh,
you see what I'm saying?
Maybe.
That's why I'm sort of confused. Is that somehow this alternate dimension where the Allies won, but a bomb goes off in San Francisco and Joe kills Frank, or is this? My prediction is really just a load of questions. I should probably solidify.
Yeah, you're not.
I don't
you're
really
not
know
saying
what I
anything.
think.
You're asking a lot.
Yeah, I guess I think
this
that
is the opposite of predictions.
I guess I think that maybe these films represent possible futures, possible things.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
And the collection of the films has more to do with deciding which path, which thing happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Somehow. But I ultimately
Or I think what the man in the high castle is trying to do is show them what could be.
Sure.
Not what was. You know, he's trying to show them the world that they could have.
Still.
Yes.
Not could have had, but could have.
Yes. Okay. As in future tense, not past tense. Like would have been nice kind of a thing. This is could happen. Now, granted, obviously the future looks pretty dim for Frank in this scenario.
I guess so. But I mean, the Allies' victory that we saw in the pilot episode is a hopeful thing. So I predict that we're going to have more footage in the next episode. At least I hope so.
And I predict we are not going to find out who this man in the high castle is.
I predict you are right.
This season. So any final thoughts before we close this out tonight?
I just wanna see episode 10. We have one more episode this season, and I can't wait to watch it. I hope that some loose ends are gonna get tied up for sure.
Me too. I will say, I've loved the whole season, but I am more excited for episode 10 than I have been excited for any episode prior.
This episode 9 was awesome. This was
really built.
Yes, this was exactly the kind of episode I like.
Yes, and I hope 10 does that for, of course, season 2. So
surely.
All right.
Yes.
Let's call it. Let's call it a night.
Thank you guys.
Yes, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. Go on iTunes. Tell us what you think. Of course, YouTube, ask questions. Tell us what you think. One episode left.
Please give us some predictions.
I am your host, Courtney Henderson, of course, here with Taylor.
And I'm Taylor Bolt. You can find me on Twitter at Taybolt, TayBoldt, or on Instagram at Tbolt.
Have a great night.
Thank you guys. See you next week.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.